Hey guys, welcome back to Delta State Skies. Joining me today, we have
Jacob?
Jeffrey.
and today our guest is current interim chair of Delta State University Commercial Aviation Department, Colonel Brad MacNealy. Thank you for joining us today. How's your day been?
Great. Glad to be here with you.
Good. So we're just going to kind of interview you and kind of get to know you more. You know, I've had a chance to know you. You gave me my tour here when I was coming in. But that's really all I've got to know about you, besides working real close. Let's start at the beginning. Were you born in Mississippi? I know you're here now.
No, I was actually born in Sheboygan, Michigan.
Really?
Yeah, Sheboygan's on Lake Huron. It's probably 30 miles from Mackinac Bridge.
Really? Okay.
You're a long way from home.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
That's right. It was, my mother grew up in the UP, Michigan, Upper Peninsula,
Yes, sir.
and my dad was from Canton, Ohio. And they actually met in the UP at University of Northern Michigan.
Okay. So your dad attended university?
Right, he went there on the GI Bill after World War II.
Okay.
And my mom was a farm girl from Northern Michigan.
So farming must run in the family then now. But so then your dad was in World War II.
Right,
You're a colonel, or I think you retired as a Brigadier General.
that's right.
Okay. So military family then. It really runs in the family.
Yep.
Nice. You were saying what, 5 generations?
Right. My great grandfather was he was in the cavalry in World War I.
Really?
Really?
Right. And his dad was in the Civil War.
Wow.
And my dad, World War II. I was in Desert Storm. I'm sorry, not Desert Storm, but Iraqi Freedom, Iraq and Afghanistan. And my son did 4 tours also in Iraq, and he did a tour in Syria.
Really?
So he retires next year. He'll be the 5th generation.
Wow. So it's really going along. So we're doing some research, and you did 4 active duty tours.
Right.
Where all did you go?
Well, I was in Korea 4 times. I was in Panama twice. Korea, I mentioned, and stateside most of the time. I spent a tour in Iraq and a tour in Afghanistan.
Okay.
You've been there, done that.
So how was your tour in Iraq and Afghanistan? I know it was very tumultuous at the time.
My tour in Iraq was for 12 months.
Wow.
And we got activated in November of 2003. And in December of 2003 is when Saddam Hussein was captured.
Okay.
And, when Iraq fell, they looked for him. He hid out for about 4 or 5 months. And they had the drones that were taking video, and they got some tips on where he was. And they found him living down a little rat hole.
Oh.
And Special Forces captured him. Of course, the local brigade that had that sector took credit for it, but you can tell by looking at the pictures of when they captured him, it was Special Forces that got him. And so he was captured in late December of 2003. So when we got there, he was already captured, but they were keeping him down at Baghdad International Airport around the Special Forces, had him secured. But they had, Saddam Hussein had built these palaces all over Iraq, probably a dozen of them. And during the initial invasion, the U.S. had bombed most of the palaces. And these palaces were like castles with moats around them.
Yes, sir.
And I went into several of them, but the price of these things must have been $100 million a piece. I mean, it was the most gorgeous built, buildings I'd ever seen.
Oh, I heard stories about them. The gold caches.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Like
all the AKs, weapons.
and you have these already quite expensive guns, and you just see, oh yeah, this is like a gold-coated MP5. It's like,
Very impractical,
wow.
but cool looking.
Yeah.
Well, they say that he built all these so everybody, no matter where you were in Iraq, the people could see these palaces, and that represented him.
Mm-hmm.
That he was this great, powerful guy that nobody better mess with.
Just
Well,
can't really
until the US
escape because
came.
he's right there.
Well, when the bombers bombed most of his palaces, he had built the basements in these palaces to be bomb-proof. So in one of the palaces they bombed that was all rubble, the U.S. made a makeshift prison in the bottom of
Okay.
the
That's
palace.
one way to do things.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
You're not wasting resources then.
No.
Already bomb-proof.
Comes back to bite you in the tail.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I actually heard they had to design specialized bunker-busting bombs
Wasn't
just to get down into those bunkers. I
Wasn't
think
that how the Moab was developed? Was the Moab was made for going through those bunkers and detonating on the inside?
they
Well-
just took like a 5-inch gun barrel, filled it full of explosives, tempered it.
Yeah, how was her
They
barrel?
dropped it once in Arizona. It's like, okay, it works.
Yeah,
So they
it
shipped it
works.
overseas.
I don't know how they did it, but in this particular palace, they didn't bust the bunker. It was in good shape, but they had him secured down there. Well, every time he would have to move from that secure area, how would he move? Well, he would move by our aircraft, so we flew him. And I got a chance to fly him a couple missions, and mainly down to the Green Zone, which was where all the embassy people
Really?
stayed down in the
Wow.
middle of Baghdad. And they would escort him away from the palace. We land in a landing zone. They'd escort him onto the aircraft. We'd fly him down the Green Zone. They'd escort him, and he was captured in '03, and all of '04, '05, and part of '06, he was on trial.
Okay.
Wow.
And finally, they found him guilty. And in 2006, they hung him. But the whole year of 2004, our brigade moved him.
Really? So you were flying him around yourself?
Well, I was a brigade commander, so I flew a couple times a week.
Yes, sir.
But I tried to get on every type of mission that we flew. We had Chinooks, Blackhawks, had Kyle Warriors, Apaches.
Yes, sir.
So you were all rotary craft.
No, we had fixed
Oh.
wing too. We had the Sherpa cargo plane, looked like a small FedEx twin engine. We had 11 of those. We had we had 5 King Airs that we flew the
Okay.
VIPs around, and we had 3 Citation jets.
Okay, so
So we
you
were
flew a
fixed-
little bit of
You had the
everything.
wide range of both rotary craft and fixed wing.
Yeah, we were core aviation. Core aviation meant that we worked for the Corps Commander, and that we flew the whole country of Iraq, and we flew VIPs, out of the country.
Yes, sir.
So I got to see on missions, every inch of Iraq.
Wow, that's
Wow.
cool.
Matter of fact, you hear about how hot it is in Iraq. We actually had a mission in February where it snowed in northern Iraq. Snowed on us.
That's not something you hear about.
Was
No.
that up in the mountains? Or?
Right, it's up northern Iraq toward the hills and the mountains. That's right, toward the Iranian border.
Okay, nice. So what was the main aircraft you flew?
I flew the Black Hawk. In fact, I was in the 1st Battalion
Mm.
in the Army to get the Black Hawk.
Really? Okay.
Really?
Wow.
Quite some history there.
Yeah.
I went to flight school in early part of 1980. I finished the early part of 1981, and just by luck, I got the Black Hawk transition and went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay.
And my 1st battalion commander was a guy named Barry Sotak. He was a lieutenant colonel. He ended up being the first special operations brigade commander in the Army. So I was there when special ops and aviation started.
Yes, sir.
In
Okay.
fact, our battalion was the first one to fly night vision goggles.
Oh,
Really?
really?
Yep.
I hear
Wow,
that
you got
takes
some
quite
history
some
there.
skill.
When we first started flying them, we were strap-ons, and we actually would tear the part of the goggles that went against your face. We took that out, and we played with them, fixed them where you could take them on and off, just clicking them down.
Yes, sir.
So the modern day goggles that they use
Nods,
today was from experimentation that we did back in 1981.
I
Oh,
actually
wow.
heard a very interesting story pertaining to the night vision goggles. I just wonder if you heard it. So I've heard reports that people using the first night vision goggles, especially while flying, experience hallucinations due to the specific type of light they were using. Did you ever hear anything about that?
We that's all we did was fly at night when the goggles came out, but we never. I never hallucinated. Now you would, it's green, dark shadow of green, light shadow of green. It's very easy to get disoriented with them, especially when they're full face goggles. At Fort Rucker, Alabama, where I learned how to fly, we used a full face. But when I got in special ops is when we started experimenting. And when you have the full face goggles on, you have no peripheral vision. So that's why you would get disoriented, and that's why we took some of the gutting out of it and just made the goggles, like binoculars to see through.
So is that the main reason why you still have cases nowadays where you have, like, I know there was one 2-3 years ago where you would have these crews that would get really spatially disoriented and would crash because they didn't know where they were, what orientation were they at, was caused by that, just trying to figure out and not being able to?
You know, about 4 or 5 months ago, there was a crash at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And it just brought back, when I heard about it, it brought back memories because we were flying out there in goggles. You know, sometimes 30, 40 aircraft flying out on that reservation at one time. And you lose your depth perception. Even back then, they didn't have the vision you have now. Even with the goggles we used, the vision was pretty poor. It was a lot better than flying in pitch black dark. But the advances they've made in goggles now, you can fly just like you can in daytime.
Wow.
Now, so I don't hear of that much today.
Yeah, like it doesn't happen nearly as often, but I did see like a high importance incident that happened a couple of years back. I think they crashed into the Gulf, I think it was either the Gulf or it was somewhere around the Gulf.
Over water.
Yeah, it was over water, and
A lot of accidents have happened over water.
because you can't tell,
No
it's just
depth perception.
darkness.
Especially when the moon's not up.
Mm-hmm.
The moon reflects a lot of light. You can see great with the moon up. No moon and a cloudy night, then it's pitch black dark. And no matter if you get goggles on or not, you can't see well.
So you're gonna get us some night vision goggles to train in? This is a new chair.
Well, I'll tell you,
Oh goodness.
you know, I got the opportunity to fly a C-17 sitting in the back. I didn't
Aw.
fly in front, but C-17 into Balad Air Base where I was based, and also down in Baghdad, and they use goggles too.
Really?
Really?
So the Air Force uses them. They put them on when they go down to land, but
Yes, sir.
same thing. You know, the enemy. That was part of our mission to secure the airfields.
Yes, sir.
And anytime an aircraft was coming in, we had to have security Apaches and Kyle Warriors flying around with Hellfire missiles, looking for somebody trying to shoot a surface-to-air missile at them.
Just ready to go.
Right.
It's like it was early 2000 or late 90s, early 2000s. The DHL A300 that was struck by the
I was there when that happened.
You were there.
Really?
Right, DHL. Very interesting story there. I was the full colonel over the aviation brigade, and the one-star Air Force general was on base too, you know, with his mission. He had F-16 mission, drone mission, and he had the Air Force had 5 groups around the country.
Yes, sir.
Well, the Air Force commander at Balad Air Base did not have a way to get around. So if you wanted to travel, you had to put together 5 vehicles and gunners, and you had to travel across country. It was very dangerous because of the IEDs. So when this general first got on Balad, he kept calling over and saying, hey, let's have lunch, let's have breakfast, let's have dinner. Come on over tonight and smoke cigars on top of the building. And I'm going, what's this guy? You know, I don't even know this
He's
guy.
just
Why
bored.
does he want to get to know me?
Yeah.
And then after I got to know him a couple of weeks, all of a sudden I get this call and said, the general needs to fly down to Baghdad. Can you give him an aircraft?
That's why. He was trying to get to use you.
He was buttering you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not quite used, but he was definitely buttering you
Well,
up.
I'm definitely not guilty of that.
He was a very important guy, and he got his aircraft. But they shot down the aircraft, DHL aircraft.
Mhm.
Well, I shot it down. I say they knocked out an engine.
Yeah, they not the wing section of the part of the wing tip was basically ripped off.
Right,
They
but
were landing.
but it landed.
Yeah.
So we get summoned down to see General Casey, 4-star general, number
Wow.
1 general in Iraq. And we sat down. He comes in. He said, we just got this aircraft shot down. All our trucks are being IED'd. We can't get supplies in. We can't get fuel in. Do I need to shut down the flights inbound? If they shut down the flights inbound, they're shutting down our supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that 1-star Air Force general was going to say, but it shocked me when he said it. He said, General Casey, those aircraft have 4 engines. They can fly on 3. They can fly on 2. And they kept flying.
And they can glide on 1.
Exactly. I mean, I was shocked when he said it, but it's true.
I mean, the supply chain is what keeps you alive, so I
That's
can
right.
see that
Just
train of thought.
But it was
The brass to say that to a 4-star general.
right. It was. I think it was April.
No pressure.
No pressure.
April of 2004 was when that happened, and it. And one of the, we had allies in the country too, and a couple of the allies units that had sectors, they weren't the best tacticians in the world, and there were some issues there too. So it was a tough time. That was also about the time President Bush says that combat operations are over. Well, they weren't anywhere near over. The terrorism was just getting started, really. So
Yes, sir.
they kind of turned around on us. That year was a year that a lot of politicians thought the war was going to end and we were all going to go home happy, and it just didn't
That
happen.
didn't happen.
Was there ever a happy side in war?
No.
So we were looking you up and doing some research for the interview today. And one of the notable things I found is you commanded the 1st National Guard Brigade ever deployed in combat. I think it was 134 aircraft and about 3,000 soldiers.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's quite a lot of money.
Well, I got to give you a little history behind that, and it's Mississippi history.
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
We had a congressman from Mississippi named Sonny Montgomery. His nickname was Mr. National Guard,
Okay.
and he was a general in the National Guard.
Yes, sir.
But he would tell you that in my last job in the military, I was the USPFO, that's United States Property and Fiscal Officer.
Yes, sir.
And the budget for Mississippi National Guard in those 10 years that I had that job, $650 million a year pumped in the state.
Wow.
That's a huge economic impact to the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Well, Vietnam, during Vietnam, there were very few, if any, National Guardsmen deployed to Vietnam. So if you were in Vietnam, you were considered a draft dodger. Well, in fact, a lot of people criticized it. Bill Clinton was criticized as being a draft dodger.
I was just going to mention that.
George Bush got in the Texas National Guard. He was accused of being a draft dodger.
Didn't Bush Sr. fight in World War II?
He did. He sure did. But I'm just saying you were stereotyped as
Yes,
if
sir.
you got in the National Guard, you were getting out of having to deploy because the Guard didn't deploy. Well, from the time Vietnam was over in the early 70s until Desert Storm, there weren't many deployments. Well, Guard didn't deploy. Well, all of a sudden, the active forces and the politicians said, well, look, if the Guard's not going to deploy, why are we spending all this money on the National Guard? Well, Sonny Montgomery insisted that the National Guard start being deployed. Why? Because of the economics of it. So in Desert Storm, the National Guard got deployed, big time deployed. And the National Guard was criticized for not being combat ready. And the National Guard, since Desert Storm to this day, has proven over and over and over that we can do a good job. Not only can we do as good a job, in some cases we can do better job.
Yes, sir.
Prime example of this is aviation.
Yes, sir.
When you take guys that fly helicopters, that are also insurance, firemen, construction people, they have multiple skills. So they just don't have one skill of flying, they have all these other skills. So you put a guy in the National Guard in the military with, say, 10 different skills versus a guy on active duty who has one skill. What do you have? You have a force multiplier. So Sonny Montgomery was a very wise guy, and he put the National Guard on the map, and he saved the National Guard from going away. Now, every time you have a deployment now, you have people coming out of your local community being deployed. Those people right there are sending the message back to their community. Hey, I'm deploying, I'm helping serve my country, support this. You don't have any more Vietnams where you spit on soldiers coming home now, because now you got local people that everybody knows that goes deploys. So Sonny Montgomery was one of my heroes, and he's the one that more than anybody else from Mississippi got the National Guard involved. And now that when we go get deployed and go to combat, we're all going, not just active duty.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Did you ever have Did you ever have the opportunity to meet the man?
Yes, I did. I flew him a couple times.
Wow,
Really?
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
He was from Meridian area, and he went to Mississippi State, and he had a lot of friends that went to school with him at Mississippi State. And my father-in-law was one of those people.
Oh wow.
And I got to meet him numerous times. Got to know him. Been to D.C. to see him. He was a great man. He's Mr. National Guard. There'll never be anybody like him.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Talking about National Guard, a good family friend of mine who actually went here to Delta State, he became a captain in the Navy not too long ago. He flies helicopters on the carriers. Well, he did. And I've always wondered, do you talk to each other across branches, or is it just kind of like, hey, we're working together, bye?
That's a great question. I was in the 1st Black Hawk Battalion in the Army to get to fly Black Hawk. And Coast Guard got him not long after. And the Coast Guard recruited me to come over to the Coast Guard. I thought because my dad was in the Coast Guard, I really thought long and hard about it. But ended up not doing it. But the reason that's a great subject to talk about is, when did the war on terrorism start? It started Iran rescue hostage mission in 1980. Guess when I got in the military? 1980. Guess what happened on that rescue mission? The Air Force wanted part of the mission, the Army wanted part of the mission, the Navy wanted part of the mission, the Marine Corps wanted part of the mission, and the Coast Guard wanted part of the mission. So that's 5 entities that do things completely different from each other.
Everyone wanted a
that
piece of
sounds
the
like a
pie.
mess.
Everybody wanted. Same thing happened in a little invasion down in the Caribbean at Grenada in 1983. Everybody wanted a piece of the pie. Well, when you take everybody wants a piece of the pie, it's kind of like putting an all-star team together that you don't know how to work with each other. And they go into the Iran desert, and they had 6 helicopters and a bunch of fixed wing, and they ended up aborting the mission, but the airplane takes off and flies right into a helicopter and crashes. So it was an embarrassment to the United States. It never went off. Well, Jimmy Carter was president at the time, and there was an election going on. He was running against Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan won the election, and they gave the hostages back because Ronald Reagan says, I'm not going to put up with it. And what happened from that Iran hostage disaster is Congress passed a bill, and the military got their act together and put all the special forces into using the same tactics, techniques, and procedures. So from that point on, when we go in and do special ops, we do it good. Not good, we do it great. When they do a special ops mission, and we were assisted special ops in Iraq, they train for days and days and days. And they go over scenario after scenario. And they have half their people play the enemy, and they play us, and if this is going to happen, what's the enemy going to do? And when they go into a mission and something goes wrong, they react to it because they're trained for it. We have the best special forces in the history of the world, and probably the next closest might be the British or the
Germans?
no. No, but I mean, nobody can touch our special forces. And for a long time, we try to recruit for our special forces because they're special people.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And I will tell you that in Iraq, 95% of the combat action was special ops.
Okay, so there was one thing that really interested me during our research was catfish air. I saw you created and implemented catfish air, and I found an interesting logo. What is catfish air to begin with?
Well, number one, my family farms catfish.
Okay.
Mississippi's #1 producer of catfish in the world.
Yes, sir.
And back in 2003, when I was being deployed, I had turned my power of attorney over, and I was real concerned about when I'm gone for a year and a half. When I come back, am I going to be broke? And my fish business going in the pot? and the catfish industry wasn't doing too well then. Well, when you get deployed, units have call signs, like the Air Force has call signs. So we're on our way to Iraq, and they say, what's the call sign of the Aviation Brigade from Mississippi going to be? Well, it's a marketing opportunity, right?
Catfish.
We're going to market catfish. So we were the Catfish Brigade. Now, our call sign before we deployed was Talon, a claw,
Yeah.
Talon. Well, we discussed it amongst the staff, and we just said there was another guy on the staff that had catfish ties from Greenwood, and we decided, hey, this type catfish, we'll go be the Catfish Brigade. So, and my call sign was Catfish 6. Commanders are always 6. Catfish 1 was the personnel folks, 2 was intel, 3 was operations, 4 was logistics, Catfish 6 was the commander.
Okay, so that's why your picture
That's
here
right,
says
yeah.
Catfish 06.
Right.
I may be a little bit biased because I'm a fisherman, but that is awesome. I love it. 100% better than Talon.
Yeah.
It was good, but the question was Catfish Air. Well, military has doctrine,
Yes, sir.
and the doctrine when we went into Iraq was that if you wanted to fly on an aircraft, you had to submit a request through channels, bureaucracy. You had to go through 5 or 6 channels. You had to get the brigade staff, and not the brigade staff, the corps staff. And the corps staff had to decide if you ranked high enough to get on a helicopter.
Okay.
So only people we were flying were generals and their aides,
Okay.
or ambassadors, or some politician that's come over to visit. That's the only people we're flying. Well, not long after we were there, IEDs were blowing people up right and left. We had amputees coming into the hospital at Blod every day. So less and less people were traveling. Well, every time we landed, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, there was a ring around the helicopter of people, about 5 or 6 people deep, begging to get on the helicopter.
Really?
These are soldiers that had to go from point A to point B. So why they want to get on the helicopter? Because they were stuck. You just can't get in your vehicle and travel from point A to point B. You have to have a combat convoy to travel. So we were landing with a helicopter with 1 general and 1 aide on board, and the aircraft holds 11 seats. Or a Chinook would land that has 33 seats and 2 people on board. So on our own, without permission, we came up with a Space A program. You ever heard of Space A? Space available.
Yes, sir.
If we have space available on our aircraft and somebody needs a ride, we're going to give them a ride.
Yes, sir.
And then we established a system where you could call in, email in, any way you could communicate with us, and we advertised our numbers, and people would call in, and they would make reservations. So we landed somewhere based on mission needs. We filled the helicopter up every time.
Wow.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
You
it
don't
really
want
does.
open seats ever, really.
Prime
You're just
example.
wasting fuel at that point.
Yeah.
Prime example. General Petraeus. You ever heard of General Petraeus?
That name rings a bell.
He
slightly.
was the division, 101st Division commander on the initial invasion into Iraq. And he stayed, he trained the Iraqi military. He trained them to defend their own country. Well, he had 2 helicopters dedicated to him every day.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. And we took that away from him because we needed those aircraft.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't like it. Well, he goes to General Casey and argues his point that, I'm training the Iraqi people. I'm important. I got to have it. Well, he can come up with a schedule just like everybody else. And we ended up putting soldiers on his aircraft too. I mean, even though he's a very important person, and even though he needed a helicopter, he can schedule his helicopter just like we could any other general.
Yes, sir. Oh. So, how did you come up with, or I guess we already answered that, the Catfish Air. You had something about,
So, being the rank you were at the end of your time in the military, how many men did you command?
3,000, a little over 3,000. Had mostly National Guard, had a lot of active duty, had Air Force. We controlled all the air traffic control towers in
Wow.
the country.
Holy cow.
And there was over 3,000. We had 6 battalions, In fact, one of our battalions was from Illinois, and we had 68 Purple Hearts. So we had 68 soldiers out of 3,000 that got wounded. 0 died.
Really?
That is amazing.
That's
Zero.
impressive.
0 died.
That's extremely impressive.
When we got back to Jackson after our deployment, one of the people interviewing us stuck a microphone in my face and said, "How in the world were y'all able to stay in Iraq in a combat zone for a year and nobody died?" I said, "Look, it had to be divine intervention. It had to be." And we had a lot of close calls, 68 injured, but the worst injury we had was a lady named Tammy Duckworth, and she was flying a mission. I was flying a mission the same day. It was November 12th of 2004. And every time you flew in Iraq, you had 2 ships, 2 Chinooks, 2 Kyle Warriors, 2 Apaches, 2 Blackhawks. You always flew in pairs because if one gets shot down, you got the other one to save you. Because you know what happens when the aircraft gets shot down in foreign territory? They're going to get it on the media and make a big publicity thing because that's their number one target. Number one target of terrorists is knock down a high-value target like an aircraft. They wanted to shoot us down. Well, the first year there, we flew under 100 feet. And the reason we flew under 100 feet because our aircraft survivability equipment was not working properly, and we had some aircraft shot down prior to us getting there. Well, if you're over 30% above the Earth angle, the heat-seeking missile would go back down. If you were over 30%, the heat-seeking missile would go into the engine. And if you shot a helicopter, the helicopter's going down, not like DHL. So we flew under 100 feet. So we're flying, and the safety officers and all our pilots agreed to that. I didn't dictate this is what we're going to do. They came through safety council and says, we think it's much, much safer to fly 100 feet below. So everywhere we went 100 feet. And they would rather take small arms fire from underneath than take a surface-to-air missile that you had no chance to survive.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know the Blackhawks were a little bit armored.
They were,
Yeah.
but AK-47 did go through.
Really?
Yep. So anyway, every time we flew a route, we would try not to be predictable. But they had palm groves near the rivers, Tigris Euphrates rivers.
Yes, sir.
So there were certain palm groves, with this very thick vegetation, you felt safe going over. Well, there was a Fallujah fight back then. It was the biggest fight when I was there, town of Fallujah. And unbeknownst to us, and a failure of intelligence sharing, because another brigade did not share the intelligence like they should have, we flew over this palm grove that the intelligence was there that the Al-Qaeda had moved into that area. Well, we flew over it and didn't get shot at.
Yes, sir.
2 hours later, Tammy Duckworth and her 2 aircraft that she was flying with flew over, and she remembers getting hit. She remembers being shot at, and it was barrage of fire coming up, and AK-47 and RPG fire came up. Well, she remembers getting hit. She remembers feeling that she got hit. She was navigating on a map, and the pilot in command was sitting to her left. She grabs the controls, and she's as she's flying forward, the aircraft's shaking, and all of a sudden she told us it was like a miracle. A field opened up, and she shutters the aircraft and lands. And right before she landing, she feels for the pedals to keep the nose straight. She could not feel the pedals.
Really?
And lands. The reason she couldn't feel the pedals because she didn't have any legs.
Ooh.
The RPGs came up through the bottom of the aircraft, took her legs off. So the other aircraft circles around, sprays machine gun fire everywhere.
Yes, sir.
And they come in and land behind her. They get them out of the aircraft. The guy in the back was wounded. Door gunner was wounded. A passenger was fine. The pilot in command was fine. Get them on the aircraft. They come back and get Tammy because she slumped over with all her gear on. And as they unbuckle her and get her out of the aircraft, they realize she's still breathing. Her legs were cauterized. They were not bleeding.
Oh.
That was
Wow,
amazing.
that's-
That's
would be
divine intervention.
Yeah.
But that saved her life.
That
They got her in another aircraft, flew her down to Taji, medevac picked her up at Taji. They take her to the hospital at Baghdad International, pumped 40 pints of blood into her body.
Wow.
Now, how many pints are in your body? 8 to 10. So in other words, as fast as she was bleeding, they were pumping blood into her body. They kept her alive. They put her on a C-17 and flew her to Landstuhl in Germany. Got her stabilized, then they flew her back to the States and took her to Walter Reed, right outside D.C., and kept her alive. Now, that was November 12th. I got home in January, and I went to see her.
Yes, sir.
I went to see Tammy at Walter Reed, and walked in her room, and she was laying up in her bed, and great spirit, great, morale. Every day she'd get in, they towed her around to see all the other passengers, and she'd pep them up. It was a miracle that she survived. It was a miracle, her attitude. And she later got appointed to the number 2 person in the VA hospital.
Yes, sir.
She later ran for Congress in Illinois and won.
Really?
And she later ran for senator, and she won. And she was on the short list to be vice president under Biden this year.
Wow.
Tammy Duckworth.
That's impressive. I mean,
What a woman.
at that point, you've got the attitude because you've basically got a second lease on life. I know I have a few relatives specifically that were the same way, and it's just you've got to take every moment after what happens for what it is, and everything's a gift. So that's an impressive story, and definitely divine intervention, like you said.
I thought for sure when you said she couldn't feel the pedals, the tail got cut loose, and then you said no legs. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, same.
She's got 2 children since then,
Really?
Wow,
and one of them was born when she was 50 years old.
that's impressive. Someone's
She-
definitely smiling down on her.
She is one tough woman.
Oh yeah.
So, one thing I found on you was at one point you were deputy commander, and it said of about 500,000 soldiers.
Right.
Really?
That's
Wow.
right.
Tell
That
us
must have
about
been a lot of stress.
Well, actually, when I got back from Iraq in 2005, kind of relaxed a little bit. Next thing you know, a big storm hits the Gulf. Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf, and being the state aviation officer for all the aviation in Mississippi, I was deployed down there, and we did search and rescue.
Yes, sir.
So we saved a lot of people, found a lot of people dead.
Mm.
We did a lot of hospital evacuations. We found the biggest things that people needed was water, insulin, and baby formula.
Yes, sir.
And we actually would fly our smaller helicopters into neighborhoods that were trapped because people couldn't get in, and take a survey of what do you need. And the big items were baby formula and insulin. And we would fly supplies out. But during that operation, there was a general called General Honore.
Yes,
He was the first Army commander, and he was the active duty guy that was in charge of the response. Now, Mississippi had their governor in charge, Louisiana had their governor in charge, but the military response was General Honore, Russell Honore. And I got to know him real good because we flew him every day and talked to him every day and worked with him every day to help turn that thing around. And biggest concern we had was there was no plumbing, no clean water, those kind of things. And General Honore used to tell me all the time, said, I don't work off a calendar, I don't work off of a watch, I work off of seconds. Just make it happen now. So I learned from him, you never accept no from somebody that doesn't have authority to say yes. And don't accept no, make it happen. He made it happen. Well, I got to know him real well during Katrina, and after Katrina was over, the 2nd National Guard Aviation Brigade was going to be deployed to Iraq. So he called Mississippi National Guard and requested me to come to work for him.
Yes, sir.
So I went to work for him, and he was commander of 1st Army, which is all the reserve component in the United States, and he brought me in as his deputy.
Okay.
Wow.
And my specific mission was to help this aviation brigade get trained and deploy them. In fact, I went back over to Iraq ahead of them to make sure everything was smooth before they got there. So
Wow.
that was a great tour working for him. He was a great guy.
Yeah. So you talked about Katrina. You were leading the efforts of about how many aircraft? Like
We had 68 aircraft.
68.
What happens is in a disaster like that, other National Guard states like New York, a good friend of mine that was commander of the state aviation officer in New York, brought his barrage of helicopters down. We had Tennessee, Missouri. We had, I think it was like 12 states brought their helicopters into Mississippi to help us with that response.
Yes, sir.
My son was in the Guard then too. He was on a track hoe, moving debris off houses down in Burlington.
Really?
It was, and I flew down there to see him a couple times. It was horrible.
No, I bet so.
Every time I go down now, I just drive around, and you still see vacant lots down there today.
Yep. My dad used to work in New Orleans about the time Katrina had hit, and
Right.
so he was able to get a pass to go into New Orleans for work right after it hit. And
Wow.
some of the stories he had from that time were really gruesome and horrible. So I can't imagine, the Gulf Coast as well,
Right.
and Gulfport and all those areas.
Well, that storm hit that night, and the next morning I was on a Black Hawk flying up and down the coast,
Yes, sir.
assessing the damage.
Wow.
So I was probably one of the first few thousand people to
See
see
everything.
it. Probably one of the first 100 to see it from the air.
Yes, sir.
My uncle was he was in the Coast Guard at that point. He was in his I think he was in a Jayhawk at that time, rescuing people off their roofs.
Right.
While it was still unfolding of how bad damage was, and the stories he told me of just the utter devastation.
Yeah. We actually partnered with the Coast Guard out of Mobile, and my hat's off to the Coast Guard. They know their stuff. There was a lot of fires going on, electrical fires that caused fires, and they were the ones getting them off the rooftops, like you're saying.
Well, to kind of lighten the mood and get off this
Yeah.
topic,
Ooh.
what got you into aviation, specifically flying rotorcraft and aircraft specifically?
Well, it's kind of like most people. When I was a kid, my dad took me out to the airport and got me to ride an airplane. And he used to love to go out to the airports and watch planes take off and land, and it kind of stuck. But I didn't have the financial means to, pay my way to fly. So I went to college on a football scholarship, and what they call now a Pell Grant. It used to be a DEOG grant, and did work study. And I joined the ROTC program, which paid $100 a month. And in 1975, $100 a month was a lot of money.
Oh, doesn't seem like it now, but
Yeah.
$100 is $100.
That's right. But my sophomore year, a buddy of mine and I ran into a recruiter,
Yes, sir.
a Marine recruiter, and we were fired up. We were going to join the Marines.
Oh boy.
Back in those days, they'd call your house, to follow up. And they called my house. I wasn't there. They talked to my dad, World War II vet, my dad. And they said, "Hey, can I talk to Brad?" He said, "He's not here right now. Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, I'm a Marine recruiter. I just want you to know he scored a fabulous score on the test, and we're ready to sign him up tomorrow." So I walk in the house, and my dad is white as a ghost. And he said, "Come over here and sit down." Went over and sat down. He said, "Son, he never talked about the war, but he said, I don't want you to go through what I went." He said, "But every 20 years we have a war about." He said, "You're probably going to see that someday. And it's okay if you go in the military. It's fine. I'm okay with that. But I want you to go in as an officer. And the reason I want you to go in as an officer, because when I was in the Pacific, the captain of my ship was not a very good leader. And, you have good leaders, you got average leaders, you got bad leaders. And I don't want you to be in that position where you have no say-so. And I'm okay with you joining the military, but please go finish your college, get your degree, when you get your degree, you commission an officer, and then at least you have some say-so.
Yes, sir.
And he said, I'll get a second job, I'll get a third job, I'll get whatever it takes to help you get through college.
Okay.
So anyway, I went back and finished college and got commissioned, and I was an infantry officer.
Okay.
And we were at Fort Benning, Georgia, and I was all gung-ho, you know, going to be leading troops into combat on the ground. And this guy walks in a room one day, about a month before we were done with that training, and says, the Army is short helicopter pilots. Is anybody in this room interested in flying helicopters?
Someone's hand shot up. Yep. Like, I am.
Said, okay, well, you got to go take this test, and you got to go take a physical. And so a few days later, we went out to the woods for bivouac for 15 days. And the last day, they flew these Huey helicopters out to pick us up. And I hadn't taken a shower. I hadn't bathed in 15 days.
Oh.
And this Huey lands, and I jump on, and I'm sitting on the console between these two pilots. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I could smell their aftershave, and I could smell their coffee. And I said, this is what I want to do.
In that spoiled life, huh?
And when we got back the next day, I found out I got a slot for the Army Aviation Center to be a helicopter pilot.
Really?
So,
Wow.
blind luck, Lord was looking after me.
I get what your father means by going in as an officer. My grandfather went in the Army, and he wanted to be a mechanic. So they trained him to be a mechanic.
Right.
And then they sent him over to be in Germany to be a cook. It's like,
No say-so.
Not what I signed up for.
like all of that training just to cook.
I bet he was a good, talented cook.
He served spaghetti with ketchup.
Oh.
There's nothing else you can do.
You know, that's the number one
Wow.
complaint in the military is food. I thought it was good. In Iraq, we take surveys every few months, and the number one complaint was food. And the
Really?
food. We ate lobsters and steaks some days.
Oh, but you got
Maybe the
helicopter
officers.
treatment.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got the nice food. You got the troops on the
No,
ground.
they actually, I have to give credit. They funded us really well.
Really?
You know, they brought, when I first got over there, we were in tents and porta potty. Well, actually, it was worse than that. You had to dig trenches, you know, for latrines. But they brought in these connexes and portable bathrooms and showers. And
Okay.
after being there a year, it was plush. It was good.
Yeah, well, I guess you always adapt, really,
Right.
to what you need.
Even
to.
had air conditioning.
Oh,
You better have
bet
it
that
120
was
good
nice.
temperature.
look, more bougie than our Cessnas right now.
Exactly.
I've always wondered, was it dry or humid heat?
Oh, it's dry. It was dry. You know, your underpits were, you know, salty. It was 120 degrees though. I mean, it took
120 degrees is still 120.
It's 120
It
degrees.
zapped you big time.
I remember
Get
that.
caught
It was
out
like
in the
that.
sun and you only have minutes.
Remember when it felt like that earlier this semester, and that was awful.
Oh, especially with
Wow.
all the gear you would have to carry.
Oh.
Oh yeah. We would have to work shifts, you know. We worked at night for sure.
Yeah.
Because temperature dropped.
There's no way you can do it otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, but you can only work at
A
night.
lot of heat strokes, I bet. Trying to work during the
Everybody
day.
drank a lot of water, and everybody looked after each other really well.
Oh.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, you always gotta stay hydrated. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's one thing about it is when you work together as a team, you look out after each other.
Yeah,
It pays off.
that's one thing I like here is the teamwork and camaraderie between the school and the department itself.
Yeah.
Well, getting us to Oshkosh this year,
Yeah.
We were
that was a
talking
big
about
team
today.
effort. So what? We talked about your aircraft getting into aviation. What kind of aircraft have you flown, and what experience do you have?
Well, I'm qualified in the Huey helicopter and the Black Hawk helicopter. I've got some time in a Chinook helicopter.
Really?
Yeah, matter of fact, one of the young ladies that is in DMI, her father was one of the Chinook pilots in Iraq with me.
Really?
Wow.
Huh.
Small world.
Mhm.
Right.
That really is.
And she performed the other night over at 8 West, and he came over. We spent some time together.
Oh, that's cool.
But Rusty is his name.
Sir. I'd love to sit down and hear some of the stories you two have.
We sat there while she was singing. She great singer, but we sat there while she was singing, reminiscing about Iraq. But I flew probably a dozen missions with him in the Chinook.
Really?
Yeah, and I flew Kyle Warriors.
Yes, sir.
And then on the civilian side, all my fixed wing time, other than bootleg time, is in the military was in the civilian world. So I've flown anything under 12,500. I've flown. I've probably flown 30, 40 different types of small jet aviation planes.
What about those beautiful near Cirrus we have?
I rode in the back when we first got them because I wanted those guys to get stick time.
Yes, sir.
People ask me all the time about flying, and it's kind of like that crop duster down in Inverness said. A guy, student at Delta State, said, "Hey, I got 130 hours. How many hours you got?" He said, "I stopped counting about 50 years ago."
At some point, it's just tedious.
Yeah, I log my time for currency.
Yes, sir. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I once helped my dad consolidate his logbook, and he's a pilot for the main line. So it's like, holy cow, that's a lot of hours.
That's right.
At some point, it's just you've hit everything you need to hit.
Yeah.
Just maintain the currency.
Yeah, I don't have the hours your dad does, but I've got over 8,000 plus.
Really?
Wow.
Wow, that's really impressive.
That's if you take 365 days times what is it, 8,000 something hours is about a year in the air.
Really?
What's 365 times 24? I think I've got about a year in the air.
About 8,760 hours.
I'm about there.
Wow.
I'll be 67 next month.
Really?
1 out of 67 years in there.
Man, I thought you were turning 21.
So talking about flight hours, did you ever do anything fun like in the aircraft?
That you can legally
That
talk
you can
about.
legally talk about.
Because I remember the captain guy I was talking about. He has his favorite story where he was flying a bunch of pirates, and he was told to not engage with guns. So he asked his gunner to grab. He had a bunch of MREs, so they just started chucking MREs at the pirates, trying to scare them away.
You threw. What is that? Food.
Have dried food.
Yeah.
I guess some of the highlights of those kind of things is at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, they had a parachute club, and they allow civilians to parachute.
Oh no.
Well, before you parachute, you come out there and say, "I want to take a ride up, just to see what they do, and if I'm not scared, then I'll do it." So I was telling my wife about it. I said, and she says, "No way I'm gonna jump. No way I'm gonna jump." Yeah, but this is the only legal way I can get you to get in the helicopter and I can fly you.
Okay.
So she came out there and signed up for parachuting. She got in the helicopter and got to fly up to 10,000 feet and got to fly back down with me. So I got to fly her in a military aircraft.
That's
Pretty good.
nice.
There we go.
That's
Yeah.
one way to do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Always there's loopholes somewhere.
Yeah.
My dad, they had civil leadership flights down to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And I got him on the list one time, so I got to fly him one time down to Camp Shelby.
Really?
Yep, and those kind of things. I got to fly a lot of friends that got all those trips. And I did do one thing that was something I shouldn't have. A buddy of mine's crop duster.
Oh, no.
Oh, this is going to end well.
Crop duster stories are always a good one.
Well, way back in the day, back in the late 80s, he took me for a ride in his crop duster.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there, it's a one seat, but I'm sitting on the side of it.
I was wondering about that. Those things
Yeah.
are tiny things.
Right. I'm sitting on the side of him, and he flies me underneath power lines, and he's doing all these crazy maneuvers, this and that. And he always wanted me to take him up in a helicopter. Well, I couldn't legally do it, but I was flying one day up in the Delta, and he had a party at his house. He lived in Moorhead, Mississippi. He had a party out there.
Oh,
He had a swimming pool in his backyard, and there were probably 50 people
Oh
there.
no.
oh no.
So there was some fish ponds. He lived right by some fish ponds. A bunch of fish ponds behind his house. So I came in just like that picture right there. I hovered over his fish pond, and as I'm hovering over his fish ponds, it's white capping. White caps are everywhere. Well, the way you keep fish alive when
Is-
the sun goes down is you oxidize the
You
ponds.
aerate.
So ever since then, I get phone calls. Hey, can you get the helicopter and come here and make my pond?
Dude, how terrifying would that be to just be at some random party
Just
and
see
the
a
G
black
men show up in the Blackhawks
See a
just
Black
hover
Hawk, like,
looking at you.
Well, luckily he knew what I flew. So.
I bet everyone else had a heart attack
Yeah.
at that party.
It's like, honey, why is there a Black Hawk in the reservoir over there?
Also,
I
those
don't know.
those crop dusters are something else. I knew somewhere in my family, I'm not quite sure on which side, was an airman. He flew in the Pacific for World War II.
Right.
And he did one of the worst battles. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But he's like, all right, I finished all the dangerous stuff. Let's go crop dusting. He unfortunately didn't make it.
Oh,
But
He didn't make it back from World War II.
he didn't make it back from crop dusting.
Oh, that's dangerous. That's really dangerous.
World War II couldn't handle him, but crop dusting.
oh,
That's what got him.
Yeah, we started that crop duster program, and
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Only, we're trying to recruit those people that show traits of being crop duster for a livelihood, and part of the selection process is you have to work for a crop duster on a crop duster strip for at least a year,
Yes, sir.
because you got to prove that you're willing to get out there before the sun comes up, stay out there in 100-degree temperature all day long till the sun goes down, be right back out there the next day,
Yes, sir.
have those chemicals all over you, be fueling planes all day, washing planes all day, and it's amazing how many people there are that want to do that.
We should be getting the second class of the ag pilot students.
They
Ag students.
start Monday.
Do they?
Really?
Oh, that'd be awesome to see. I know.
How-
I'm friends with a few of them on Facebook,
Oh,
and I
good.
saw the videos of Mark on
Right.
Facebook. He had a video of circling a wildfire
Wow.
recently in South Mississippi.
Well, there's a bad need for it.
Oh, very much so.
So how many crop dusting students are we getting? I know our last class was 4 or 5.
We had 10.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a good bit.
We got 10 graduated. We got 11 coming in Tuesday.
Really, that's awesome.
You don't really see them around campus.
Right.
No, they're real. I saw them a good bit in commercial night class with you.
I know, that's why I said 5, because that's all I meant.
Yeah.
They try their best. They have to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
So every chance they get, they sneak off and work, and then come back. But when we tell them they got to fly, they got to be here.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and they're not only flying instrument and commercial with us, but they're flying the Citabri and the 188 over at Blues Air.
And
Plus, they're
the-
going to class, learning about chemicals and
Yeah.
all
So
that.
they've got a full schedule, and they're trying to work full time to make a living.
So they actually get classes on the chemicals?
Yes, they have. In order to be a crop duster, you have to pass all these tests annually
wow.
to qualify to handle hazardous material.
Okay, I didn't know that.
that's-
That's really interesting.
One thing I learned, one thing Miss Parker told us about in her regs class is crop dusters don't really have much as far as laws go for aviation regulation, but they have a lot more than you would think for agricultural.
I thought for sure you could drink it, and they're like, no, don't do that.
Part 137 agricultural operations literally says you can ignore almost everything in this book. And that's just
You
hilarious. to me.
have to know your chemicals.
Yeah, know your chemicals, and it's like they'll hit you for the slightest overspray or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I agree with that 100%,
Yeah, so
because that can cause major damage.
It's just funny to think about. But
Actually, a pond near my house got killed because someone oversprayed a top of it.
Fish died.
Yes, sir.
really,
hmm
maybe that's why we don't have any good fishing in Mississippi.
Maybe. Well,
In the
not
Delta.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's in the Delta.
Well,
Great
I've got-
fishing everywhere.
I've got one picture that's like you and a catfish this big,
No, it was a little bit smaller than that.
and your thumb was bigger than its mouth. But so we were talking about crop dusting. You own a farm now.
Right.
Is it a catfish farm or?
Oh, grow catfish, corn, soybeans,
Really?
cotton, rice.
A little bit of everything.
Yep. It's. I'll tell you, in my business career, I just was the right place, right time.
Yes, sir.
First piece of property that I bought was about 1,500 acres in 1994 for less than $1,000 an acre.
Wow.
Wow.
That land today is worth over 6,000 acres.
Oh, I bet. So those catfish ponds, those are private?
Yes.
Because I know sometimes Fish and Wildlife like to stick their thumbs and stuff.
So we can have good fishing. We just got to go to his farming ponds.
Yes.
That might be a little bit cheating.
Actually, the catfish industry is up and down like a yo-yo, and
Really?
we're actually getting out of
Oh,
fish.
wow.
But my son has got a business where they land for him, and he takes the pond. How you build a pond is you push up the levees,
Yes, sir.
and he's taking down the levees.
Okay, and
So
just
he's-
filling it
he's-
back in.
Right, he's putting it back in row crop. Used to be back before you had the center pivots and a lot of irrigation. You depended on the good Lord to drop the rain just at the right time to have a crop. Well, nowadays our farm is 100% fur irrigated. In other words, we can get water to every piece, every bit of it.
Wow.
And we've got about 8,000 acres now, and it's all sloped where you put those poly pipes on the high ridge and it slopes down to the low ridge.
Wow.
And we have retention ponds where you recycle the water, and we got electric wells, so you don't have the diesel engine wells where you got to pump
Yes,
the
sir.
water out. So that reduces the cost a lot. Electric wells. So we've got probably one of the most modernized, efficient farms in one block in the Delta. So,
Wow.
I mean, we have
That's
such a
impressive.
high water table and so much land.
well, that water table was being threatened.
Oh, no.
That's why we're recycling water.
Okay. I did not know
Yeah,
this.
we've got 6 retention ponds that we're recycling water with, plus taking them out of ditches and lakes,
Yes, sir.
because the aquifer is, if they say we keep using the water table like we are now, we could run out of water in the aquifer.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Matter of fact, it's the same aquifer that we're using farming is the same water source they're using in Memphis.
Really? Wow.
So, like everything else, you don't want to abuse it. And we have to send in our meters every year to show how much water we're using, so
Mhm.
that down the road they might have to start charging us for water like they do out in California.
Really?
Mm.
That's rough.
Hopefully it doesn't get as bad as out in California.
Yeah.
Right.
But, I got one.
Probably would
Well-
be cheaper to buy bottles of water and just pour it in.
Yeah. You get a little bit of water, you get a little bit of water.
I get a little bit of water.
Poke a hole in the cap like you did in junior high, just a little hose. But one thing's funny is I knew you had last year, my first semester. I knew you had the barn and the farm and everything, and they had some random stray cat just walking around
Right.
campus. It was
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
malnourished and everything. And I came up to you and I was like, "Hey, you want another cat? You need a barn cat?" And one day you said sure. So one day I just kind of scooped it up into a container, made sure it was nobody's cat, of
I
course.
still got that container.
Do you?
Just stole the cat.
It's kind of wild.
This is my cat now.
Mine. I gave it to you. I got it to you after I I had it for a couple hours. Gave it to you. Then you got it home, and apparently it showed up, and another cat came and joined immediately.
That's right. When
They
you
multiply.
when you live where I do and they harvest a crop, guess where the mice are going?
Right to the
crap.
barn.
Oh,
And
yeah.
guess what those cats do?
Tear them up.
Hey, it beats those rodent traps.
Oh yeah.
I don't get how a cat could be malnourished on campus with how many dead birds show up daily.
I don't know. I followed it into the old swimming pool area.
Really?
Yeah, it was open one night, and I saw the cat just walking around. I was like, "Hey, no, out!" I thought it was haunted, so I'm sitting here.
Here,
Yeah,
kitty,
never mind.
kitty,
Yeah,
kitty.
you're on your own, kitty, kitty. I ended up naming it Buttercup after one of our old professors.
That's your oldest.
Unfortunately, Buttercup hadn't seen Buttercup in a while. Of course, we got a lot of coyotes and
Yeah.
raccoons and everything else, so I'm not sure what happened to it.
Part of the living in the rural. area.
Buttercup was great.
Buttercup did her job, his job, its
We
job.
miss him. Yeah.
He will be missed.
So, did you go to school at Delta State, or how did you get here?
Well, I retired when I turned 60 years old. You have to retire,
Yes, sir.
and I retired and went home and was going to help my son farm
Yes, sir.
and help him convert those fish ponds and do those kind of things. And after about third heated conversation on how we were going to manage the farm, I decided that, no, you've been doing this for 20 years while I've been gone with the military. You continue on, I'll find me another hobby.
Yeah. That was
So-
heated father-son arguments.
Right.
I know a lot about those. You've met my father.
Yeah, but he does a great job. You know, you can manage something 100 different ways, and who's to say the right way is?
Yes,
But,
sir.
so you know, my wife said you gotta get out of the house. You gotta do something. So I went. I started solo search. What do I want to do? You know, and I said, you know, I still like to fly. I don't want to give it up yet. It was one of those times in your career you either had to stop flying or you had to double down to keep flying.
Yes, sir.
So I'd always heard about the Delta State program because this program started in 1981.
Okay, so
I didn't move to the Delta till '84
yes, sir.
after I got off my active duty tour, my first one, and I'd always heard good things about the aviation program. So I looked it up online. They said, you know, part-time flight instructor. So I put an application in. Next thing you know, they called me and I'm interviewing. And next thing you know, Josiah says, "Hey, you want to be director of flight ops?" I said, "I ain't bargaining for that now. I just want a part-time job."
I'm sure no one could refuse your resume on that front.
Oh yeah, yeah. My part-time flight instructor. You know, he's got this resume longer than anyone else's here. Oh, I got a lot to learn.
Well,
If that's part-time, I hate to see what's full-time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
it's been a lot of challenges,
Yeah.
a lot of good challenges though.
So you were a part-time flight instructor for a
Right,
bit?
I got hired as a part-time flight instructor, and you know, about 2 weeks later, I interviewed for the director of flight ops.
Okay. So you, when did you start being the director of flight operations?
It was 4 years ago this month.
Really? Okay, so 2019, September of 2019.
Right, been there 4
Wow.
years.
That's
Imagine
awesome.
being a student and your instructor is a one-star general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No pressure. No
Oh.
pressure.
Well, luckily, we get to work hands-on with them, so we don't have that as much pressure. You know, it's just the bar is high for his expectations of us.
It's like right along the level of having a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have seen his commercial class.
Well, you know, we in the military I always learn whoever you're with or whatever organization you're in or whatever you do, I always try to leave it better than it was when you got there.
Yes, sir.
So that's my ultimate goal is, you know, I'm getting up in age. I don't plan on staying here forever, but I do want the program to improve.
Yes, sir.
And I think that we're making some good decisions toward improving this program. So I would love it when I leave here that it's on autopilot and you know, gets better and better.
Yeah.
So I think it has improved, and I'd like to see a few more things happen before I run off in the sunset. You know?
Yeah.
You can't go running off on the sunset yet. You gotta let me graduate at least. So, you obviously were director of flight operations for almost 4 years. Right now, you're our interim chair,
Right.
due to circumstances, of course. How is that job going? How, you know, is it more stress or a little bit more politics on the side, or?
Do you like the brand new office? Nice comfy chair?
The office is nice, but you know, I've told somebody today I'm getting 300 emails a day, and I'm answering 250. So in other words, I'm getting 50 behind every day.
Yes, sir.
It's I'll tell you, it's not near as much fun as being flight ops.
Oh, I bet.
But the one thing that I do like it, I can make some decisions at this level that can make a difference more than I was before.
Yes, sir.
Josiah did a great job with the program, and I just want to continue what he was doing. And you know, I'm just having to work through some issues, but we've got some good people here, and we've got a few more things to do to get on track. You know, we've got 30 students right now don't have a slot.
Yes, sir. Well, I feel really bad for him, but it's also the sign of the growth for the
Right.
department itself. And right now, of course, we're hiring new instructors, we're ordering more planes, we're doing everything we can to alleviate the growing pains.
This is definitely not an issue of long term. This is
No,
just
a very
short-term.
short-term
yeah.
issue. And it's like I know our instrument ground course is full. I know our private pilot ground course is full. And those are 40-person classes, so I can't imagine what this next group of incoming students is going to be,
Well,
and just how much it's going to grow exponentially going from here.
I talked to 4 CFIs today. They're in Arizona
Really,
that want to come here and instruct.
I think one of our CFIs, Dan, had came from Arizona as well.
He did.
So what's about Arizona that draws them here?
It's
Well-
dry heat. They'd rather wet heat.
I'd rather dry heat.
You know, when you become a CFI, you're going to want to go somewhere where you can get the most hours the fastest, so you can get the airline job.
Quality of life
So
too.
these CFIs I talked to today, they want to go somewhere to get more hours so they can get to the airlines quicker, which they want to use us and we want to use them. So come on.
One thing I'm noticing is we're having a lot of Part 61 instructors come in, which is also going to help the longevity because they have to get to 1,500 hours
Right.
instead of the 1,000 that our graduates have.
You know, back in 1983, I was did the same thing I'm doing right now in the Army.
Yes, sir.
I was over the training at Fort Rucker for Black Hawk helicopters, and so I've seen training in this environment done different ways.
Yes, sir.
I've done 141, I've done 61, I've done military, and it's good to bring in people from a different training environment because there's more than one way. We do it the Del State way.
Yes, sir.
Who's to say there's a better way? So when you bring other people in from other programs, you can kind of compare, why are we doing it this way?
Yes, sir.
Is there a better way to do it? You know, so we always have to ask ourselves that. But the key to success, I believe, here at Del State is we got to work as a team, was what you said.
Exactly.
And, you know, I just had a conversation a couple hours ago with Brandon Bayoni and Marshall Tomlinson and Sheila Milliken. We're just talking about how we can improve. And it was good to hear those kind of things, you know, and being excited about where we're at and being excited about where we're going. And once we get all our students a flight slot, we are going to, we're going to feel a lot better. And,
Yes,
you know, the big question that I have is, how big do we need to grow?
Yes, sir.
In fact, I asked President Enos that. I said, you know, we got to figure that out.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you get too big.
Yes, sir. We don't. That's going to be an issue you either figure out or you learn the hard way.
But I'm going to tell you, and you three guys are young guys, our biggest challenge is keeping people here on the full-time staff.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's great you want to get your 1,000 hours and get out of here,
Mm-hmm.
but we're always looking for somebody like Marshall Tomlinson that wants to finish this program and stay here
Yes, sir.
to help teach. And the reason he wants to stay here, he's married and got 2 kids, and he wants to be home with his family.
Same way,
Just like we were talking earlier.
like with Sparker.
So I'm constantly asking folks like y'all, hey, would you be interested in staying here after you get your 1,000 hours instructed? I'm constantly looking for. That's going to be the key, in my opinion, to success is keeping those people here.
Retaining the
Yeah,
employees.
you don't want the program fizzling out.
Right.
I know my plan for the future is go out, get my experience, get my seniority, build up that retirement, and I do eventually hope to come back and either fill the chair shoes or flight director of flight operation. You know, help out because you guys have helped me out so much.
That's good things. It just reminds me, starting Monday, we have a retired Delta airline captain and Air Force captain coming in here Tuesday to be one of our flight instructors.
Really?
69 years old.
Wow.
That's impressive.
He's coming in here to be strictly a stage check pilot.
Really? Okay, so that's going to alleviate a lot of the pressure as well on the flight slot side.
Yeah.
Wow.
So doing things like, and think of the experience he has, just like your dad. That'd be like your dad coming here to
Mhm.
instruct.
Wow. That's
So we need more of that. And, you know, the different kind of experiences we can get in here, the better our program can be.
yes, sir. Like you were saying, you know, you expand so much, you have different ways of teaching things, and you can pick the best from each.
That's right.
Wow. And it's good to hear that the program's doing so well.
Well, you know, since I've been here, we've had 3 crises,
Yes, sir.
and all 3 of them, the sky was falling, but we came out.
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
good. And we'll do the same right now.
That's the hardest thing for people to understand is it's bad in the moment, but if you keep your head on straight and you push through it, it'll come out better in the end.
That's right.
So
Just got to keep positive attitude and push on.
I forgot where I was going. Sorry. One thing I've noticed in this new class of students that came in is you have your way of classifying students, your 3 ways. You've got the pushers, the pullers, and the pointers, I think
Right.
it is.
That's right.
We have a lot of pointers and pullers,
We do.
not very many pushers, especially because we're getting to such a pedigree with our flight slots. I think the highest GPA we couldn't accept for a flight slot was like a 3.6.
That's right.
So it's becoming a lot more work ethic based.
Well, also, we're pushing real hard to have people have their private pilot's license before they come.
Yes, sir.
And the reason that is there's a huge dropout rate in private,
Yes, sir.
especially, you know, in the general public.
Well, that's the spot you really learn. Is
Right.
this for me? Because that's when you're getting hit with so much just flying at you, and you don't understand any of it. It's
Literally.
We encourage people to get their private somewhere else and come here, because if you come here with your private, your chances of getting through our program have gone from about 60% to about 95%.
really
Wow.
wow. That's awesome to hear.
You've proven that this is what you want to do.
I heard a joke the other day. It doesn't really fit for Delta State. I just thought it was funny, but if idiots could fly, this place would be an airport.
Yeah.
Feels like some places are like that, but not here.
No.
Nah, most of these people are very smart.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm very impressed with this new class. I have a trigonometry class with one of them. His name's Jay, and super smart.
Yeah. We did a point system. You get so many points for GPA,
Yes, sir.
but you get so many points for having your private pilot's license.
Yes, sir.
And those that have their private pilot's license and have a decent GPA got a slot.
Yeah.
Because they deserve it. They went out and, you know, got their private pilot's license.
They're driven for it and know they want to do it.
And, you know, Brett Oleus left us, and he went down to Hines. We're hoping to partner with them
Yes, sir.
and put the 141 umbrella over Hines
Okay.
and help them produce those private pilots.
And then come here, funnel into here
Right.
with their private pilot
Right.
starting instrument. Okay.
I know when they interviewed for the job down there to head up their aviation program, the president of Hines Community College told me, I heard him say that whoever they hired, they wanted him or her to be Delta State friendly,
Yes, sir.
and that was great.
Wow.
So we want to work with them because they want to work with us.
Good.
Well, on each episode, we've started to try to ask.
No,
Wait,
we're
not yet.
So on the weekends, I know you do a lot of flying.
Right.
You still I know you had a full-time ride to football to
Right.
college.
Right.
You're still really involved in college football. I think you referee
I do.
on the.
Yeah, when I was in the military, I couldn't referee, you know. And when I got toward the end of my military career and got my Friday nights off, I started officiating, and that's my hobby. I don't golf, I don't fish, I referee.
Yes, sir.
And my hobby's pretty cheap because I make a little money out of it.
Yeah. I'm trying to hop in that plane with you, get some free hours. That's what I want.
Well, every Thursday and Saturday I go somewhere in my plane, and next time I got an empty seat, you're in.
I'm looking for the front seat.
That's what I'm talking about.
There we go.
Empty seat up front.
Look, I don't have anything going on Thursday nights or Saturday nights, so I'm
Okay.
free there.
The best hobby is making money.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I used to help right before the Asian carp came in. I used to fish for them, and they'd give you so much money as a bounty for them.
Asian carp, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're jumping fish out on the river right now.
Yes, sir.
Crazy.
I was actually one of the first people to catch a Asian carp in Mississippi.
Wow. Well, sometimes you don't have to fish for them; they jump in the boat.
Yeah.
Well, this was before they got that prevalent.
Yeah. What planes do you have?
Well, I had a Bonanza and a 182, but you know, I crashed my Bonanza.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I was taking off from Indianola Airport. I was climbing about 1,000 feet, getting ready to get a hold of Memphis Center for my IFR clearance, and I smelled some burning plastic.
That's never a good sign in a plane.
Burning plastic is wire, electrical. So I immediately turned back. I was hoping that it wasn't anything to it. And then I saw some smoke, real light smoke coming up. And then I started searching all over the cockpit, and I saw a ball of fire coming through the firewall where the wires come through.
Yes, sir.
So I immediately turned all the fuel off, all the electrical off, and started diving for the ground. And the cockpit kept filling up with black smoke, black smoke, black smoke. And I thought I was going to have to land in the field. And of course, I was diving. I wasn't worried about stress on the aircraft. I was wanting to get that plane down before it caught on fire, or until I choked to death. And so I was going down for a field, and it kept, as I got close to the ground, I started leveling off, and it was floating and floating and floating. You know, when you put the gear and the flaps down, it slows down. But when you can't put the gear and the flaps down, it's going to float. So I was able to turn base and land on the runway, and it was weird going down that runway and hearing the bottom of that plane hitting that concrete.
I bet that was an expensive sound.
Oh yeah, but it came to a stop, and I could not. I was, of course, in the left seat. I could not feel the handle, the door handle. So I couldn't see it, so I had to feel for it. And I got the door handle out and got out just in time. And it was less than 5 minutes later. It just burned to.
Wow.
So.
That's
Glad you got out of
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
that's a scary situation.
But it reminds me of my training. I mean, if
As-
you have an electrical fire, you can't let the electrical get to the fire, because you're going to have electrical get to the fuel get to electrical,
Yes, sir.
because you're going to have a fire.
Yeah.
So
It's going to get a lot
You know.
worse exponentially.
somebody said to me, "Did you get your checklist out?" I said, "I have time to get a checklist out."
Did you?
You got to know what
The
to do.
one time you don't go by the checklist.
Right.
Did the NTSB ever tell you what
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
caused it?
They came of course. Jimmy Christensen is my mechanic. He does all the work. He did all the work on the plane. And what had happened is I had bought that plane from Widow Lady, and she did not. Her husband had died, and the plane was in both their names. So the FAA was going through a lot of red tape, saying, "Hey, we need this document, and this document." So it was getting the registration. Remember, the registration went from 3 years to 7 years.
Yes, sir.
Well, in that changeover, that's because people were raising Cain because they couldn't get their registrations within 6 months. And I got caught up in that. So the plane sat in the hangar for 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
that'll do it.
Jimmy had found some rat droppings around the plane. And
There it is.
we're NTSB, was confident that the rats had eaten the plastic off those wires, so it arced.
Oh,
And it caused something in there to catch on fire, and then,
I remember at the time. I found out about a week after, I think it was. I was working on approaches with one of our instructors, and we were at Indianola doing the approach into Ruleville. And you could see it. We went missed at Indianola, and you could see the char marks from your plane
Right.
on the runway.
right.
And I was like, wait, no, there's no way. And then sure enough, I asked you like a day later.
And it wasn't.
Really, the fire got that hot?
Oh yeah, it's flaming.
Holy
Oh,
cow!
it
The only
burned.
thing left is the propeller and the engine, the 2 wings and the tail section. Everything else was gone. Gone.
Everything.
If I'd have been 3,000 feet, I would have made it.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have you here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your other plane? A 182.
182.
Okay.
It's got a souped up engine on it, so it'll carry a load.
Nice. I was talking to.
I'll take the 206 on anytime.
You're telling me you could throw whatever you want and basically not put it out of CG.
That's right.
I was talking to Michael yesterday for some flight team practice, and he was saying you also have a stole kit on it.
You got VGs on the wings, stow kit. You can land it. I could land it less than 1,000 feet easy.
Wow. That's
Nice.
impressive.
I don't want to do that, but if I had to, I think.
Sounds like we
That
need
kind
that
of
for flight
capability
team.
makes you think bad thoughts. Like, ooh, sandbar.
Hey, there's old pilots
Hey,
and there's
hook a
boat
ripper
pilots.
bed.
Old boat pilots. I'm not boat anymore.
anymore. So, what are you thinking future-wise for yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years, 15, 20?
Retired, going to all my grandkids' games, traveling. I've taken a couple cruises. I like that.
Oh, the Alaskan cruise. I remember you came back with the full beard and everything.
That's right.
I was digging that look. I miss it.
I've got a lot of Army buddies, Air
Yes,
Force
sir.
buddies that we've talked about making trips together, and I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
I'm fortunate to have a couple good pensions and love seeing my grandkids.
Yeah.
Well, what I was saying earlier, didn't realize where we were at. We've started to ask our guests on the show, what's your favorite aircraft and why? I have a feeling I know which one it is,
I think
but
everyone knows what this one is.
yeah, I'm assuming it's our special painting right there.
That's the baby right there. It, you know, like I said, I was one of the first ones to fly that. I was a second lieutenant, butter bar. So I was brand new, didn't know nothing. In fact, when I went to the first unit I worked for, the warrant officers, in the military, the warrant officers are the experts. I walked in, this warrant officer had acted as the platoon leader before me. And he said, I need to talk to you one-on-one.
Oh boy.
I said, okay. I mean, this guy works for me now, you know. He says, I've forgotten more than you ever learned. You need to listen before you talk. And I thought to myself, is he messing with me? And but I let it go, and he was a wise guy, because I needed to listen to experience. You learn from those who've been there before you, and I did listen to him. I think that's been the key to my success. You know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen, and I try to do that. I try to listen, and I think my military career and the career here and other things I've done is because I try to learn from other people.
Yes, sir.
And but that helicopter right there is, you know, that made me a man.
Oh, I bet so. Well, thank you for coming on, and well, thank you for joining us to this episode of Delta State Skies, and hope to see you again. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.